I stood there in my kitchen, clutching the email so tightly my knuckles turned white. My fiancé's parents had just sent me an invoice. Not a request, an invoice, for a luxury vacation package they expected me to pay for. And the worst part? They wanted me to cancel our honeymoon to do it. My stomach dropped. The room spun. I could actually feel the blood rushing to my face, my pulse pounding in my ears. This wasn't just rude, it was humiliating. I had been saving for that honeymoon for over a year, dreaming of those quiet mornings with my new husband, just us. And now his parents were trying to take that away from me. That was the exact moment I decided. If they wanted a fight, they were about to get one. What would you do if your in-laws tried to steal your honeymoon fund and turn it into their personal vacation money? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more crazy real-life stories. Before this nightmare started, my life felt like a rom-com. I had just gotten engaged to the sweetest man, Ethan Calloway. We met in college, fell in love over late-night study sessions, and when he proposed at the lake where we had our first date, I cried so hard I almost dropped the ring. Planning the wedding was stressful, but magical. I had every detail mapped out. The venue, the flowers, and especially the honeymoon. Ethan and I had been saving for over a year to afford a quiet, romantic trip to Maui. Just us, no family drama, no work emails, no distractions. Then came the first crack in the fairy tale, meeting Ethan's parents, Diane and Roger Calloway. They were polite at first, but I quickly noticed how controlling Diane was, always giving her unsolicited opinions about my dress, the guest list, even what cake flavors were classy enough. Roger wasn't as vocal, but he went along with whatever Diane wanted. The day I got that email, I was finalizing honeymoon payments. Instead of excitement, I opened a message from Diane with an attached invoice for a Caribbean vacation for 4. Her note was short. Since you're already spending on a honeymoon, it only makes sense that you treat the whole family. We can reschedule your trip for later. I froze. My hands trembled as I reread it. They weren't asking. They were demanding. In that moment, the dreamy wedding bubble popped, and I realized I wasn't just marrying Ethan. I was marrying into them. That night, I locked myself in the bathroom, sat on the cold tile floor, and just cried. Ugly, hiccuping, makeup-smearing tears.
How dare they?
How could anyone think it was okay to demand that a newlywed couple cancel their honeymoon, something so personal and special, just so they could sip cocktails by the beach? When I finally came out, Ethan was sitting on the edge of our bed, looking guilty. He admitted that his mom had mentioned helping with family expenses before, but he didn't think she would actually go through with something so bold. I stared at him, half hurt, half furious. So, you knew this was coming? I asked. I didn't think she'd actually do it, he said softly. That answer broke something inside me. It wasn't just about the money anymore, it was about respect. It was about boundaries. And it felt like no one was protecting mine, not even the man I was about to marry. The next few days were miserable. Diane kept sending friendly reminders about the payment deadline. Roger texted Ethan with guilt trips about how family should come first. Even Ethan, who had always been my safe place, started suggesting we could just postpone the honeymoon to keep the peace. That was the lowest point for me. I felt cornered, humiliated, and powerless. But in that quiet, painful place, something inside me shifted. I wiped my tears, looked at myself in the mirror, and whispered, "No, this is my life. My marriage. My honeymoon." That was the moment my heartbreak turned into fire. If Diane and Roger wanted to play games, I was done playing nice. I was going to make sure they learned what happens when you push a bride too far. Over the next week, I stopped answering Diane's friendly texts right away. Instead, I opened a new tab and started researching brides' rights, financial boundaries, and stories of in-law overreach. I bookmarked legal forums about shared accounts, read blogs from women who'd protected their wedding plans, and even called a friend who works in family law to ask about our options. I began quietly assembling a plan. I made a ledger of every cent saved for the honeymoon, took screenshots of bank statements, and printed the email Diane sent. I set aside a portion of my savings in an account only Ethan and I could access. At the same time, I started planting seeds, subtle questions at family dinners that made Diane reveal more of her assumptions about entitlement, and small tests to see how far she would push. I felt alert and focused for the first time since that email. There was a calm, cold clarity underneath my anger. If they thought they could take what was ours, they hadn't met me. I wasn't scheming out of spite alone. I was protecting something sacred. And I would make sure everyone knew it. The wedding day arrived, and with it my plan. I had decided the perfect stage for my revenge wasn't behind closed doors. It was right in front of the people whose opinions Diane valued most. After the ceremony, during the reception speeches, I stood with the microphone in hand, my heart pounding but my voice steady. Before we toast, I said, I want to thank everyone who supported Ethan and me through this journey, emotionally and yes, even financially. Because weddings aren't just about love, they're about building a future together. I turned toward Diane and Roger, whose smiles froze the second I pulled out a copy of their email and held it up. Some people, however, thought that future should include them and their all-expenses-paid Caribbean vacation. At the cost of our honeymoon. Gasps rippled through the room. Diane's face turned crimson, Roger's jaw locked. Ethan looked stunned, but when he saw the crowd's reaction, he nodded at me in support. I continued. Thankfully, Ethan and I decided that our marriage deserves a honeymoon free of guilt trips, so we kept our plans, secured our funds, and leave tomorrow morning. The guests erupted into cheers and clinking glasses. Diane tried to stammer out an excuse, but no one was listening. The family who had once sided with her now stared at her with judgment. I felt the tension leave my body as I set the microphone down. For the first time in weeks, I breathed deeply and smiled. The power she had over me, over us, was gone. And just like that, my honeymoon wasn't just a vacation anymore. It was a victory lap. The next morning, as Ethan and I boarded the plane, I stared out the window and felt a strange mix of relief and pride. For weeks I had felt small, cornered, like my voice didn't matter. But standing up for myself in front of everyone reminded me that my boundaries did matter. On that flight, I realized this whole situation had never been about money.
It was about respect.
Diane and Roger didn't see me as a partner to their son. They saw me as an extension of his wallet, someone they could control. And if I had caved, if I had paid for their vacation just to avoid conflict, that would have set the tone for our entire marriage. I wasn't just protecting a honeymoon. I was protecting my future. I turned to Ethan and said softly, I needed to do that for me, for us. He squeezed my hand and admitted he was proud I stood up to them. That meant more to me than any apology from his parents ever could. The lesson was clear. Saying no isn't cruel. It's necessary. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your marriage is to set boundaries with the people who threaten it. By the time we arrived in Maui, the tension from the wedding was already starting to fade. The salty breeze, the sound of the waves, and the warm sun on my face made me realize how much lighter I felt. I didn't just have a honeymoon waiting for me. I had my life back. Ethan and I spent our days exploring hidden beaches, laughing over cocktails, and taking endless photos of sunsets. Each moment reminded me why we had fought so hard to protect this time together. It wasn't just a vacation. It was proof that we could handle challenges as a team, that no one could take away our happiness if we stood firm. Back home, Diane and Roger tried to reach out, but Ethan and I had already decided on clear boundaries. We responded politely but firmly. No more meddling, no more financial demands, no more guilt trips. Our families learned, quietly and slowly, that boundaries aren't optional. I found myself smiling at the thought that our wedding had been my proving ground. I had faced humiliation, disappointment, and the subtle manipulation of people I had thought would support me. And I had come out stronger, more confident, and fully in control of my own life. The honeymoon was unforgettable, yes, but the sense of empowerment I carried with me was the true reward. I wasn't just a bride on vacation. I was a woman who had reclaimed her joy, her voice, and her marriage from anyone who tried to take it away. Sometimes revenge isn't about hurting someone else. It's about reclaiming yourself. I didn't just protect my honeymoon. I protected my marriage, my peace of mind, and my self-respect. Standing up to Diane and Roger taught me that boundaries are non-negotiable and that saying no can be an act of love for yourself and your relationship. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced someone trying to overstep their boundaries in your life? How did you respond? Share your stories in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life tales of standing up, fighting back, and finding your own strength.